Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Week 12 Rotoworld Waiver Wire Chat. I am Patrick Daugherty, joined by our Waiver Wire guru, Mr. Kyle Dvorchak. We will get to all of your questions heading into a loaded Week 12. That includes all 32 teams playing for the first time in a while. That includes 3 games on Thanksgiving Day. The Packers, the Lions, the Commanders, the Cowboys, the Seahawks, and 49ers. A lot of questions with those games, Kyle. One of them is Kenneth Walker's health with this oblique injury. He seems unlikely to play. And you think that makes for a kind of like slam dunk waiver wired ad of the week. Of course, a not in my league Hall of Famer and a certain backup Seahawks running back. But who do you think is the ad of the week for week 12?
Yeah, it's without a doubt Ken Walker's backup, Zach Charbonnet. When we saw Ken Walker go down, it was very early in the game. Charbonnet got up to an 85% snap share, 21 touches, including, I believe, 6 catches. So even if the Seahawks offense won, even if it doesn't have Geno Smith, seems unlikely, but even if it didn't, or even if they didn't get going, you can't find these type of workhorses like laying around the waiver wire at this point, especially not ones that are probably talented.
All right, so Charbonnet, by the way, 44% rostered in Yahoo. So again, a lot of leagues where people kept him around, even as like the work didn't really materialize. So if you miss out on Zach Charbonnet, any reason at all to take a flyer on DJ Dallas? Is he even still the real number 3 in Seattle? Or do we just think it's going to be all Zach, especially on a short week, like not really much time to come up with some exotic game plan? Do we think it's just going to be all Zach Charbonnet against the 49ers?
Yeah, one thing that you've pointed out and I find very useful is that a lot of times these in-game injuries do lead to outcomes that don't look like they will going forward. Like Charbonnet can do everything, even if maybe he's not like a elite breakaway runner like Ken Walker is, but he can do a lot of everything. So maybe they try and throw in a bit of DJ Dallas, but the fact that they spent so much on Charbonnet, and it was a reasonable pick for any other team, like that's where he deserved to go. They didn't reach on him as far as where he deserved to go. It was just the lack of need for them. So I don't think we'll see a ton of DJ Dallas or like Kenny McIntosh if he's even still like on the active roster. So I think I do think we're in line for another 75+% snap share from Sharps.
Yeah, and Charbonnet had consolidated that third round work recently over DJ Dallas. He's the best bet to be the change of pace and breather back, of course. But yeah, it's looking like a pretty good setup for Charbonnet, save for the fact that he's playing an absolutely elite defense that might totally wreck the Seahawks' world, especially as their quarterback is playing through what's probably going to be a pretty painful triceps injury. I agree with you. Basically no way Geno Smith isn't going to play.
Is it his throwing arm tricep?
It is his throwing arm triceps, so it could be better.
Doesn't seem good.
No, could be better. But real quick, we're going to dive right into your guys' questions. But Liam, a friend of the show here, he wants you to comp Calvin Ridley to a Thanksgiving Day food. Calvin Ridley, of course, who is now good again, Kyle. What do you tell our friend Liam?
What's something you regret instantly after eating?
Stuffing. I regret stuffing.
I was going to say stuffing. I was also going to say empty calories because most weeks, stuffing when done right can be very good, but very often you get I'm just going to run my stuffing on the outside and hope he can win one-on-one out of the box, and it's disgusting. But if someone puts effort into making stuffing, i.e. Trevor Lawrence versus the Titans last week, it can go well. But then the other eight Thanksgivings in a row, it gives you 6 PPR points.
Yeah, stuffing is so often derailed. I feel like one or two like freak ingredients. Like, why is this in here? Stuffing very overrated. Thanksgiving side. We'll get to your real questions now. Lucas is wondering
stuffing. What a disgusting name! Like,
that is true. The name is
stuffing in your trough, you little piggy boy.
Yeah, the name is as disgusting as the food itself. Lucas wondering Puka Nacua or Tank Dell. We don't know Noah Brown's health for week 12. We don't really know Cooper Kupp's health. It certainly seems like he's probably going to sit. What do we tell Lucas? Who has the better week 12 odds, Puka or Tank?
I think it's Tank as much as, I don't know. I guess it's a battle of like pure raw target share for Puka versus like CJ Stroud just jumped to, I think, number 5 for me in the Dynasty rankings. Like he'd been trending there all the time, but just he proves it every single week that he's great. And really at this point, all Stafford's good for is empty calorie, stuffing level volume. As we've seen with Puka, like we've seen that Puka's been great and is not scoring touchdowns because Matthew Stafford isn't throwing touchdowns. So I'm going to go Puka. I still think I'm going to go Puka because we saw early in the season, like 13 targets, 14 targets, 15 targets. Those are in the range of outcomes without Cooper Kupp. And Tank Dell, you're more trying to get there based on efficiency. He's a good bet to get there based on efficiency. But you know what? I'll stick with the spreadsheets, which I should stick to my damn spreadsheets. Go with the guy who's going to have an absurd target share, which will be Puka.
10 targets to seem all but guaranteed for Puka. And Tank Dell, we just don't know if Noah Brown is going to play. And we still have such a limited sample size of all four of these Texans wide receivers being healthy at the same time.
I don't know if we have like a full game of that. Maybe we have like one full game. Did Noah Brown go out in week 1 or week 2? Because I think Robert Woods was banged up.
Yeah. I don't know if we even have a full game. And you would like to think Tank Dell has transcended having to worry. Not that Noah Brown hasn't been good. You would like to think, though, he has transcended worrying about Noah Brown and Robert Woods. But we've been around NFL coaching staffs long enough to know that that is never going to necessarily be the case. And no matter how well a guy plays, if someone else comes back and reclaims their old role, it could be bad news. But we still like Tank Dell.
The rookie wall awaits us all. The phantom rookie wall as Tank Dell's just playing too well. Because like you said, the problem is Noah Brown's like kind of good, like legitimately pretty good.
It is a problem.
So there are ways where they can be like, I guess it's just 60% routes.
We'll get now to our first trade question from Larry. Should he trade the Ken Walker managers Charbonnet and Ferguson for Hawkinson? His other running backs are Etienne, Brees, a returning Kyron Williams, and Brian Robinson. Not an amazing running back room, probably better than a lot of people's running backs room. Do you think he can afford to trade away Ken Walker to someone who maybe trying to look to consolidate the Seahawks backfield? What do you think, Kyle?
You mean trade away Charbonnet, right?
Yes. Yes. Sorry.
Yeah, I think so, especially because it doesn't seem like a long-term injury. I mean, they haven't even ruled out Ken Walker for this week. He's definitely not playing this week, but it isn't like one of those things where like, we'll reevaluate in 2 weeks. Like, they're going to try and run him through practice. It's not going to work, and they're going to set out a week. But we could get one RB1 game from Charbonnet or 0 RB1 games if the offense just can't get going for whatever reason. Whereas, like, you're hoping for Charbonnet to, like, reach the levels of an Etienne or a Brees, or even where Kyron was earlier in the season for just a few games. I don't even know. You're probably playing him over Kyron and Brian Robinson, but like, I'm even having to think about it. Whereas you get a like windmill upgrade by going to Hawkinson. So I think at this point you take the massive upgrade.
Yeah. So I think Larry's running back depth is good enough where he can go for that really major upgrade at tight end. I would like if TJ Hawkins ever once made a contested catch. That would be really, really nice. He just does not do it. Weekly viewer Chad. Hey guys, after Frank's breakout performance against the football team, who is Frank? Does he mean Frank DeVito? Has Darius Slayton received new life, or is it the combination of being the perfect matchup and brutal rest of season schedule? Darius Slayton's also hurt. What is his injury, by the way, Kyle? But do we like Darius Slayton's going forward prospects at all with Danny DeVito having a stunning breakout performance, one where he did take 9 sacks, we must add.
I didn't know he took 9 sacks. That's funny. I guess I do remember seeing that the Commanders defense had a still good game, which is why like defense is so terrible. You can still have a good game just by almost pure randomness because they obviously got blown up. Yeah, he got hurt and did not return. I don't remember what the injury was, but I do know that he didn't come back. And I think it was like somewhere around halftime, maybe end of the second, early third quarter, something like that. So I would say that one is obviously concerning, but 2, I'm dubious. Call me a hater. I'm dubious on the Tommy DeVito breakout.
It was an arm injury for Slayton, and the fact that he couldn't play through that arm injury is either you're going to get it like taped up and play like Tyreek Hill did,
or a bone
against the Raiders. Yeah, or a bone is broken. Not a great sign for Darius Slayton, who that guy cannot catch a break, no pun intended, in his career. Bronson wondering if you should trade Jamar Chase and Cortland Sutton for Stephon Diggs. Really fascinating trade. Jamar Chase getting a super severe quarterback downgrade. And Steph Diggs working on a fairly lengthy slump, 5 straight games under 100 yards and 2 straight weeks of really limited production. What do we tell Bronson, Kyle?
Yeah, I think you're probably taking it. I mean, it depends how important is Sutton to the operation you've got running right now. If he's like an every week flex starter for you, maybe that moves the needle. But like, I'm very concerned about what this Jake Browning-led offense is going to look like. Whereas even the Diggs slump, like we know that fundamentally not a lot has changed. I do think one thing to point out is that ever since they lost Dawson Knox, Dalton Kincaid playing a traditional tight end role, he's really good at that role. And he's so good at it that it's taking targets away directly from Stephon Diggs. His target share has dropped like 8 or 9% since they lost Knox. That might actually be something you could say fundamental, but at a high level, they still have Josh Allen. Diggs is still extremely talented. I still expect him to be a wide receiver 1, even if this moves the target share slightly. Whereas Chase, like, you could tell me this team is bad enough that there's not wide receiver 1 juice. Like, that is just possible when we're looking at all of these backup quarterbacks taking over and just nuking the fantasy value of everyone involved. You think about like how desperate we are for like Garrett Wilson garbage time, like not even touchdowns, just give us a few catches. We could be in that spot with Jamar Chase soon. I don't think it'll be that bad because I think Chase is that good, but the floor for Chase is really low.
He could get stuck in the Garrett Wilson zone where he's getting 12 or 13 weekly targets, but like that maxes out at like 6 or 7 catches for scoreless 80 or 90 yards, which is of course still usable in fantasy. But yeah, I'd rather be betting on Stefon Diggs. By the way, I'm assuming you'd rather trade Chase and Sutton than Chase and Waddle, correct?
Yep.
What Waddle? It is over half the season, and he has 3 touchdowns. He's very rarely even getting like he's only had 75 yards 3 times all season. Are we concerned at all there? Has Tyreek Hill just become kind of like a supernova at the center of this Dolphins offense, or are we still going to get some sweet positive Jalen Waddle regression down the stretch?
We will probably get the tasty regression, but I also do think you pointed something out that like the more developed this offense becomes, the more it realizes that getting the ball to Tyreek Hill in any fashion, in any way, as many times as possible is the best outcome on any given play. And even though Waddle's good, Hill is great. And not only is he great, he is the best in this offense. So I do think part of it is the fact that Tyreek Hill has become a black hole, just sucking in all targets, none to escape.
Liam, he liked your stuffing answer, by the way, for cover. That was pretty good off the top of your head, I must admit. Murphle Smurfle, would we trade Puka for Nico Collins and Derrick Henry? This is so many trades are just so fascinating because this is a hard one to value. Nico Collins, it's just the Texans receiver corps has been so strange all year. It's just been so stop and start, things getting wrenches thrown into it by injury, either to the player themselves or their teammates. I feel like usage patterns and patterns in general, they're so hard to discern in the Texans receiver corps.
Yep.
But would you trade Puka for Nico Collins and Derrick Henry in an increasingly dispiriting Titans offense?
I don't think so. Like Derrick Henry's like low end RB2. Like I think you'll probably have him ranked as an RB17, and I'll be like, come on, Pat, come to the dark side, get him outside the top 20 because there's nothing going on this offense.
They are like, home favorites this week. I'll say that.
Against who?
Wait till you see that.
Panthers, right? Panthers?
3.5 point home favorites against the Panthers. So
all right, 1 week. We'll get 1 week back of Derrick Henry, and then I think after that, unless they play the Panthers again, which I know they don't, they're going to be underdogs. He doesn't play on passing downs. Like this is the end of the line for fantasy Derrick Henry as we know it, I think. So
at least this year.
I mean, this year, but he's going to be like 29 and
I think it might be 30 next year.
Might be. Yeah. I think I'll just take the Puka and Nico side unless you are desperate for only RB2.
No, he's trading Puka for Nico and.
Or sorry, that's what I meant. I meant the Puka side. I'll take the Puka side, and because I think Puka's very, very clearly he's clearly a better rest of season play than Nico, and Henry. I think is a sort of dead zone-y type of trap where you look at him and say like, oh, I can lock in his fantasy value, and then you look at what he's actually done, and it's nothing.
Murphle just must be desperate for running back touches and maybe some touchdown odds. But it's just all trending the wrong direction for this Titans offense. And there's not going to be very many drives to finish. And I think I agree with you that I'd rather have the Puka side. But if Murphle is totally desperate for running back help, he's not like getting ripped off in this trade. I'll say that. Like Nico's not a humongous downgrade from Puka. So I don't think it's like an unforgivable trade, but I agree with Kyle that I would rather just keep Puka. Jonathan Santiago is wondering a better stash. Kenneth Gainwell or Jerick McKinnon? We've been waiting on that Jerick McKinnon getting unleashed all year, Kyle.
I don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
I mean, like, yeah, I just don't think it's happening. I think they have a very clear role for him. And maybe it happens at the end of the season, but like you're not starting him until we see it, right? And we're probably not seeing it tonight. Let's assume that. So let's say they scale up the role in week 13 or whatever. I'm not buying it. I'll assume it's a 1-game blip. So I'm not starting the next game. That game, then maybe I think about it. So the earliest I'm starting this guy is like week 15 if everything goes well. And then I still have to pray that he turns instead of 4 touches, 10 touches into a touchdown. Whereas Gainwell, there's a very clear path. DeAndre Swift gets hurt, wheels up. I don't know. I mean, there's no one from McKinnon, like ahead of McKinnon, to get hurt. They're not elevating him to the Isaiah Pacheco role.
No.
So I don't think there's a clear path at all for McKinnon to be that guy. And if it is, it probably happens in like week 16, 17 to secure the bye. They get the week off, they head into the playoffs, and we're talking about it for playoff best ball. We're not talking about it for fantasy championships.
Yeah, I think Gainwell has more standalone value. Not that he has much.
Probably also true. That's probably also true. Yeah.
He has more standalone value, and totally agree. He has much more contingency value. That you're not overjoyed about stashing either one of these players, but that Gainwell is the better stash for sure. We got Chad, another question. Basically wondering if we should be stashing Trevor Siemian, someone who has seen Tim Boyle's Pro Football Reference and has seen Tim Boyle's Sports Reference. You must see something really bad. You gotta watch the Tim Boyle college tapes. They're even worse than the pro tapes. So this must be like some super flex or 2 QB league. What would you say about using a roster spot on Trevor Siemian? It seems very speculative to me, Kyle.
Yeah, I'd rather just do it with Taylor Heineke. Like Taylor Heineke is almost certainly better than Trevor Siemian and is roughly as likely to get back in the lineup. So yeah.
By the way, keep the questions coming. We've got a lot of viewers. We have some timid viewers though, and people not getting in their questions. Any and all fantasy football questions.
Patrick called the chat cowards. I would like that to be known.
Yeah, any and all fantasy questions we will answer for the next 30 minutes or so. We have a question here. Someone needs a pickup for wide receiver depth. 0.5 PPR. Zay Jones, Elijah Moore, Odell Beckham, who got injured in week 11. Seems like he'll probably play. Or Michael Wilson, who had been building momentum, then suffered an injury. A setback with a shoulder injury. Who do you think is the best flyer there, Kyle?
I think it's OBJ without Mark Andrews, almost certainly for the rest of the season. I know they haven't ruled him out, but to me, I take it as like, maybe if we make the miracle Super Bowl run, he can show up for that game. I think they're going to rely heavily on not only Odell Beckham, they'll spread it out, but I mean, they have so many targets to go around. And Beckham has been increasingly involved ever since he finally got healthy from, I think it was the ankle issue that bothered him early in the year. And it seems like he came away from, I think it was a shoulder injury in this most recent game. It looks like he came away from it okay. I think John Harbaugh said it was minor. They didn't think it would hold him out from playing. And they get the long rest going from Thursday to, I assume they play on Sunday. So I think he's playing. And I know that if he's playing, he'll have a pretty strong target share on one of the more efficient passing attacks. Zay Jones was fine. He stayed healthy, which hasn't been a thing he's done.
I'd say Zay is 4-4 here. I would say that. That would be one of my opinions on these flyers.
You could, Elijah.
There's just like no upside. There's an upside argument very clearly for OBJ. Upside argument for Michael Wilson. Zay Jones could at least have Elijah Moore could at least have empty PPR compiling with DTR. I just don't see like any path to like wanting to have Zay Jones as like your wide receiver 4.
I think the path to upside for Elijah Moore is that Joe Flacco plays. Like
DTR
ain't gonna cut it.
You're right. By the way, on OBJ, he came back out to the sideline after getting injured. Like you said, John Harbaugh said he was fine. John Harbaugh was kind of an unreliable injury narrator, but OBJ had been building towards that breakout performance for a while. I do think he is the ad there. Marty wondering about 2 slumping wide receivers, Garrett Wilson and Hollywood Brown, no longer startable. I would say both are still startable, but give us your breakdown, Kyle. I mean, Garrett Wilson, I think this is bad for Garrett Wilson because it is hard to say anyone could be worse than Zach Wilson. I do think Tim Boyle could be worse than Zach Wilson.
That's a good point. I actually
one thing you
I
can
think
say,
they should have started Trevor Siemian. They should have started Trevor Siemian. I agree. Tim Boyle is one of the very few quarterbacks to have ever existed on an NFL roster who could be worse than Zach Wilson.
And one of the only things you could say for Zach Wilson is that he was relentlessly targeting Garrett Wilson. So how worried are you about Garrett Wilson? How worried are you about Hollywood Brown's slow 2-game start with Kyler Murray?
Garrett Wilson, I think it could be worse. I think it will be worse. My projections is worse, but we were starting at a very low point. And the biggest sell for him was that he was drawing a ton of targets. And I agree that like maybe that was partially Zach Wilson, but like as bad as I assume Tim Boyle is, I don't see him targeting Allen Lazard because no one targets Allen Lazard.
That's true.
Aaron Rodgers didn't target Allen Lazard. He was still the distant like third receiver on that team. So I think that is a feature of a talent discrepancy between Garrett Wilson and every other player on that roster, and not as much a Zach Wilson focusing on his one, which he was doing. So it's bad, but I still think the PPR train rolls on. Hollywood, I'd say maybe I'm a little more worried because I don't have as high of an opinion on him talent-wise, but I also think there is a very clear talent discrepancy between him and like Rondale Moore, and Zach Pascal right now is the other guy. So both of them, I feel fine holding, and I would certainly say they're startable.
Hollywood Brown, totally, you have to hold both of them, not even considering dropping either of them. It is weird with Hollywood. No matter what the circumstances are, no matter who the quarterback is, he always has a way of not meeting expectations. And
yeah, I can't tell if that's on us or not, but
I know
he still hasn't met them.
It's just very strange, and really strange week 11 against that kind of back and forth game, where Michael Wilson doesn't even play. Kind of hard to explain that one away, but also
Greg Dortch resurfaced. I was looking at the waiver wire article, and he got like 6 or 7 targets.
It's impossible to believe that it's not going to get better for Hollywood Brown, but I mean, that can be famous last words when you're kind of being a dead ender with a player. Western Goods is wondering what is up. Saquon, Monty, pick 2 out of these 4 running backs, Kyle.
First 2. I think Lions play the Packers at home, I believe. Is that who they play at home?
They do on Thanksgiving Day, 11:30 a.m. Central Time on one of our main rival networks, the Fox network.
So the time zone, TV channel. Thanks for all that. He's going to be a home favorite versus a very middling, uninspiring team. I expect a lot of carries for both him and Jahmyr Gibbs, and Saquon Barkley in every game that he's alive for. They're going to try to get him 30 carries. Whereas James Conner, I mean, he still should dominate the work, but I don't have as strong of a take on his talent. James Cook isn't dominating the work. So I saw another player I had to think about writing up in the waiver wire column was Ty Johnson.
Oh, I know. It stinks, by the way, the Western, you can't play all 4 of these guys. Maybe you need a few more flex spots in your league. Juice Box, wondering, full PPR league, who should you be targeting if you're trying to sell low on Jamar Chase? I don't think you can get a wide receiver 1. Maybe you could. I mean, could you get? I feel like you're getting like damaged goods guys on the wide receiver 1-2 borderline. Someone like Jalen Waddle, maybe someone like Devontae Smith. Someone like Devontae Smith. I don't even know who.
I don't think I would do either of those guys though. I would need a little more. I'm still gonna have him on that borderline. I think.
I agree. By the way, I do agree. I would not make that trade either. I would keep Jamar Chase if that was the kind of thing that was being offered to me.
What about Devontae? Do you think they would do that?
It's weird. I feel like we need this data point tonight too to see how the post Dallas Goedert Eagles target allocation goes. But they haven't even put Goddard on IR. Like they expect him back in a week or 2. I was kind of expecting this Goddard injury to change Devontae Smith's life because he's got the same problem that Jalen Waddle has. Where like AJ Brown,
good and there's great. And
a player we didn't think.
Great.
Yeah, we didn't even. I don't know if I knew it was possible for AJ Brown to attain another year, and he has done so this year. And this has made life very difficult for Mr. Devontae Smith. But I, in your head, like, what's a platonic ideal if you just have to get rid of Jamar Chase? Are you trying to get volume, like 2 or 3 players? Or are you trying to get like kind of a 1-for-1, someone you think is going to outproduce him the rest of the season?
Depends what you need. But here's one: people hate Chris Olave. I love Chris Olave, and he's someone who I think you could get Chris Olave plus for Jamar Chase still. And I think their production could be similar. So, and they're maybe getting Jameis Winston. I don't think Derek Carr is clear concussion yet. So they could be getting Jameis Winston, which would be even more fun. That would be perfect for Olave. That's a 400 air yard game in the making.
I like that one too. Ben, a longtime commenter. Sorry about your wife, Ben. How much fab? So he's in one of the leagues where Zach Charbonnet was cut loose. We have no idea how much fab he has left, but what % of your fab would you spend on Zach Charbonnet? I think I'd be getting close to emptying whatever remains.
I was going to say, if you just think you need like 1 to 2 weeks of strong RB value, I'd unload it. Like you can go pretty much to 0. If your league allows you to bid 0, say you like have to turn a quarterback or a defense at some point. If your league allows you to go to 0, I'd go to 0 because I do think he'll project for like probably back-to-back games of RB1 numbers. I don't know what we get after that, and I don't even know if we get the second week. But I'm going to have him ranked as almost certainly a top 12 running back this week. And I could have him ranked that highly next week. And I'll probably still have him like flex valuable, even if Ken Walker comes back next week. So assuming you don't have any like long-term fulfillment needs on your roster, just take the one in the hand.
1 in the hand is better than 2 in the bush, Kyle. That is the boomer phrase. Sean is wondering, so another Calvin Ridley question. We have already talked about Calvin Ridley a little bit. But do you think he disappears in a really high totaled game with the Texans, or are you going to play DeAndre Hopkins over Calvin Ridley, who is struggling with Will Levis, shockingly not living up to his first week performance under center?
I mean, he scored last week on the most gimmicky nonsense you've
He
seen.
did. A lot needed to happen for that to succeed, and then
A lot needed to happen on that play, and they all came together to support DeAndre Hopkins fantasy drafters because they lost that game easily. Anyways, I was gonna say we're totally getting a bust from Calvin Ridley. Like that's what he does. He goes on the outside. If he can beat up on a weaker corner, Trevor Lawrence gives him the good targets, and if he can't, it's a whole game of wind sprinting. But in this game against Texans defense that isn't very good, that is still very banged up with 50 to 90 players on their injury report every week.
Barely an exaggeration. It was quite literally 24 players last week.
Yep. So I was like that's just shy of half of an NFL roster. And a ton of points projected to be scored because I think CJ Stroud can absolutely give it back to the Jaguars. I think I'm going Calvin Ridley. And I just know we're setting ourselves up for disappointment. But the total, the good matchup, the high scoring environment, like that's why you play Calvin Ridley.
And as we know, football, it can be a frustratingly small sample size game. 2 games where Zay Jones actually played and finished, Calvin Ridley blew up in both of them, which to me would maybe say, I don't know what the difference in the routes is for him with and without Zay Jones, but that he's in a more comfortable position when Zay Jones is in the game and getting to do a little more of what he actually wants to be doing in Calvin Ridley. And I'm cautiously optimistic. I think some of the film bros were saying his usage changed a little bit. I need you to look into this for the podcast, by the way.
I saw he moved into the slot more this past week. I don't know if that was true in week 1, which I believe is the other Zay Jones finished game. But I do know that he moved, not a ton, but like he used to play like every single snap on the boundary. And he moved a little bit more into the slot this week. I think he maybe caught his touchdown out of the slot as well. Still an outside target, but I think that one was out of the slot. Oh, he had 2 touchdowns, so it would have had to have been one of his 2 touchdowns.
Chad needs a deep sleeper. Either Trey Tucker, who's getting involved as a field stretcher for the Raiders' post Josh McDaniels offense, or Trey Palmer, who's pretty stubbornly catching 3 to 4 passes every week for the Bucs, but seemingly not in line for anything more than that.
Give me Palmer. I think there's more contingent-based upside. And the fact that he's producing more now is also a good sign for him because they have very similar setups as far as like very clear 1A and 1, or not at this point, it's 1 and 2 for both of them. Whereas if he can, and he is forcing himself into the rotation a bit, like I think that's a good mark of talent for Palmer, whereas Tucker's done a little less of that so far. And I think it's just a better offense. I'll take some, shockingly, talk about all the like quarterback mentions. We're at week 12 or whatever. Baker Mayfield's chugging along, and he's not bad. So give me a potential piece of that offense versus the Aiden O'Connell offense.
I do wonder if Baker, it was just about his health the past 2 or 3 years, and he tried to play through way too many injuries. Tried to play through an extremely serious non-throwing shoulder injury that maybe just got his whole body out of alignment for like 2 or 3 seasons.
He was thrown on the injury report with a few other things too. They were slashing him. They were putting lots of slashes in his injury report on top of the shoulder the whole year.
He did himself a disservice playing that hurt. And you understand why players do it. Your career seems so short. You think if you sit out, then maybe you'll never get put back in, even if you're someone who's a number 1 overall pick. But Baker Mayfield, man, he's a testament to why you got to let your body get right. Jesse Freeman wondering Khalil Herbert or Zach Charbonnet rest of the season. Fairly interesting question. What do you think, Kyle?
I will go with Herbert. I would be slightly surprised if we see Deonta Foreman play because he entered last week with an ankle injury, made it to his 6th carry, I believe, and re-aggravated the injury. I'd imagine it would make sense to give him a week or 2 off. And in that scenario, which is about half of what we saw last week, Herbert got up to like 14 or 15 touches total. So I expect him to be probably more than the 1A. I do think Roschon Johnson comes in for a little change of pace, and he's a good pass catcher out of the backfield and a good pass blocker, so probably not getting a ton of PPR value out of Herbert, but he should have a pretty strong hold on the carries, the running back carries, that is, whereas Charbonnet is a more high upside for weeks 1 and 2 and contingent value as soon as Ken Walker comes back, but I think if you just take their average points, it's almost a landslide for Herbert.
And a Bears offense that, famous last words, seems to be trending back in the right direction. I was very encouraged with Justin Fields' return from the perspective that the Bears didn't put him back at square one. I was really worried that he was going to come out and it was going to be like, oh, pure pocket passer field. We're going to try this again. Or like, we don't want him to get hurt. We're not going to let him run. They just let him pick up right where he left off for the thumb injury. And I did think that was a very encouraging sign for Justin Fields. And by the way, we got a nice stack of questions, but if you have not asked a question yet, feel free to jump in. Do not be afraid. We will not laugh at your question. They're all very good. Is one reason why we won't laugh at them. So do not be afraid to get in a question if you have not already done so. Larry is wondering for week 12, you got Allen and Diggs locked in. He can start 2 more wide receivers. Who's the odd man out between Puka, DJ Moore, volatile DJ Moore, and touchdown-based Mike Evans?
That's a good crew to have at least.
It is.
I think it's Mike Evans. I mean, like,
I agree.
For me, it's Mike Evans.
There's just so much more upside for Puka and DJ Moore, and Mike Evans' touchdown odds are better than them, but they're not that much better. Where I feel like you're really chasing touchdowns with Mike Evans because he just really hasn't had a yardage ceiling this year. Where Puka and DJ Moore are both pretty solid touchdown scorers and have demonstrated much, much higher yardage ceilings this year. Lucas is wondering if you should trade Tank Dell in the Jets defense for the Cowboys defense and Puka's. It was a crazy one. The Cowboys facing Mr. Sam Howell, the sack taker extraordinaire on Thanksgiving Day. What do you think, Kyle?
Yeah, I'm not too worried about defenses because, like I talked about, they're all random. So give me – they are. That's why I don't like them. They're so random. And I'd imagine the Jets probably have a pretty tough schedule. Do they have – I guess
they do.
Probably have the Dolphins at least one more time.
They have the Dolphins twice in the next month.
Oh, still twice. Wow.
Yeah. That's
not good. Not good. So, and I think we said exactly earlier, Puka over Dell. So I think it was Dell, wasn't it?
I think I like Puka over Dell, and I think I definitely like the Cowboys defense over the Jets defense, where second straight year with the Cowboys just a wrecking ball. And the Jets defense probably have them matched in talent, but their overall situation puts them in so many bad spots that I just think the fantasy points will continue to be more freely flowing.
That's a good point. It's like, it's really nice when your opponent is dropping back 40 times a game and they're Sam Howell and they take a bunch of sacks because your offense has put them at a very big deficit. Whereas when your opponent, if you're the Jets, your opponent can just run the air out of the ball, leaving little room for sacks, interceptions, fumbles, pick sixes. Like, that's the perfect scenario, is to have a great defense, but also an offense that puts your opponents in bad spots.
That's why, so many of the best fantasy defenses. So the really good real life defenses are always good fantasy defenses, but a lot of times it is defense that is paired with an elite offense. And that's why something that is so underrated in fantasy defenses is looking for a defense that's going to be thrown against a lot, and not necessarily how good they are, but how many pass attempts they're going to face because of the sacks, because of the turnovers. Jonathan Santiago, another Zach Charbonnet question. Not surprising. Are we going to play Devin Singletary as becoming every down, every snap player in Dameon Pierce's absence? We don't know Dameon Pierce's week 12 status. Or Zach Charbonnet on Thanksgiving night against the San Francisco 49ers is rolling ball of Butcher Knives defense.
Ooh, it's a good one.
High total in that Jaguars-Texans game.
Yeah, Singletary.
Yeah, I think I'd go Singletary too, which Zach Charbonnet is probably the ultimate higher ceiling option, but I don't think his ceiling is that much higher than Singletary. I think the floor is probably a lot higher for Singletary. The total's getting near 50 in that Texans game already, and it just feels like maybe a shootout will develop.
Yeah, the total is what sold me. Like, we want a guy who gets all the touches in a game that could see a ton of points, whereas I think running back talent matters, but it can only matter so much when you're not projected to score a lot of points against a really strong 49ers defense. So Singletary.
We got some really good repeat questions from viewers, but we also got some good first-time questions. Johnny D is down by 35 with Jalen Hurts and a flex left to play. He needs upside. Who are you pairing with Jalen Hurts, DeAndre Swift or Devontae Smith?
Devonta. I think it's maybe not even the upside as much as the clear correlation is that you get one long touchdown to Devonta, and that really is what juices you to getting those 35 points, because you're not that far off, but you definitely need that upside. And I think the upside, as much as like it shifts from player to player, you can also capture a very high end range of outcome by having a play that can gain you 16 fantasy points or something. Like a really long Devonta touchdown can gain you, at least that. Yeah,
I think absolutely the right call there. And DeAndre Swift correlates poorly with Jalen Hurts, because if Jalen Hurts is getting those rushing touchdowns, it means DeAndre Swift is not. Action Jackson has 3 running back and 2 empty spots. You should start Isaiah Pacheco versus Las Vegas, Ramondre Stevenson against the Giants, or Raheem Mostert against the Jets on Friday.
Pacheco versus Vegas, not Stevenson. 3 running back and 2 empty slots. Yeah, so not Stevenson. Easy.
Yeah, I think Stevenson's can probably have another 20 carry a day, which had been so tough for him to come by before that bye. Then he got one heading into the bye. I don't think the Giants are going to be able to like limit his play volume, but it's like, what does that even amount to right now?
Yeah.
Offense? It's just so grim. Speaking of grim, we got Gremlin Brotherhood again. Tight end options. Now that Mark Andrews are down, David Njoku, who had 15 targets somehow yesterday. Gerald Everett, who seems like he's like always super questionable. Isaiah Likely, who didn't do much after Mark Andrews went down last week. Or Pat Frymuth, who had one catch yesterday against the Cleveland Browns.
You're telling me David Njoku had 15 targets?
He did. Not a joke.
I didn't see that. I haven't seen that one yet.
Not a joke.
Isaiah Likely still, because I just can't find myself. Targets are not betting on the Browns offense. I can do that with the Ravens. And we saw in 2 games, 2 games mostly Mark Andrews missed. He missed week 1 and missed most of week 11. Target shares, route rates of like 77% and 85%. They put him on the field nearly every single play when Mark Andrews is out. Hasn't turned in a lot of fantasy points this year. Would love to see that happen, but we did see it happen last year. I think he's talented. It's good offense. It's him rather easily out of this group for me.
I think it would come down to him or Njoku, but I would just much rather bet on the unknown upside with Isaiah Likely. These are 3 pretty known commodities, and it ain't great, Kyle. It ain't great. I don't ever say ain't, but I just said it. Jackson, this is kind of a mouthful here, but 12-team PPR. Hurt. Well, this is a lot. Sorry, Jackson. This one's hard to digest. Do I send Hollywood and McBride for okay, so he's listing his whole roster. He wants to trade Marquise Brown and Trey McBride for Adam Thielen. Wait, I'm confused.
I think it's one of I don't know why the second.
Sorry, Jackson. You're blowing our minds here. We're so confused. Jackson, can you maybe rephrase this a little bit? Sorry to pull up your question and then not answer it, but I am a little. He's listing his entire team there.
I just don't get why Achane or Javonte come up at the end of it.
Yeah.
Are they options to trade for as well?
Would you rather have tell Jackson this at least straight up? Would you rather have Trey McBride or Adam Thielen?
Adam Thielen.
I would too.
Knowing that he has Kelsey on his roster is kind of where my mind is going with it. Thielen's going to score, I assume, more PPR points rest of season than McBride, and I'm thinking about it as which guy I'm going to flex.
Yeah, I would rather have straight up, even though I didn't have Travis Kelce, I would still rather have straight up Adam Thielen over Trey McBride. Frank Reich reassumed play calling duties and just immediately reassumed the Adam Thielen PPR scam. Bronson is back with another question. Trade Jonathan Taylor for George Kittle and Isaiah Pacheco. He must really need a tight end. What do you think, Kyle?
Yeah, if you're bad enough at tight end, I'll say yes. Kittle's doing the Kittle stuff nowadays. And
so Lucas has a question that a lot of people are going to be wondering. Denny and I talked about this in the podcast today. Puka over Dell, even when Cooper Kupp is back for PPR. I will say, if Cooper Kupp plays this week, who are you ranking ahead for the Rams receivers? Puka Nacua or Cooper Kupp? That is one question I think a lot of people will be wondering, and I'm kind of wondering, is Puka moving ahead of Cooper Kupp for good with this latest Cooper Kupp injury?
I don't think so, because the last time we saw Cooper Kupp come back, the very first second he came back, he was Cooper Kupp again. And I think they would do that again in that if he is not ready to be Cooper Kupp this week, they won't play him. I don't think he's playing this week. Next week is questionable as well. I think when he comes back at whatever point that is, he comes back as Cooper Kupp and they don't bring him back any sooner because that's what we saw once already.
Chad with kind of a crazy question, but first up, Chad, I think Geno Smith is just going to play to kind of blow up your entire premise here. Even if Drew Lock plays, I'm not looking to stream Noah Fant. Do you have a counter take to that one, Kyle? No. Fant is just a former first-round guy who probably deserves a better NFL fate, but it's not happening.
This Seahawks fate has been kind of brutal for him.
It has. For a team that we thought liked to target tight ends, the fact that he can't get any work at all has been pretty disappointing. Lindorphins, who I've learned is a Francisco Lindor and Dolphins fan. We learned this a few weeks ago, Kyle. A preference between Luke Musgrave and Isaiah Likely in half PPR leagues.
Likely.
Wow. You're all in on Likely, huh?
You better believe it, brother.
I mean, I guess the tight end targeting has been – we do have – it's like a lot of times we're like, well, this team loves to target the seam, and then someone gets hurt and they don't target the backup at all. We know that already happens in Baltimore because it happened last year. So I don't think the tight end targets will be going away from Lamar Jackson. he is comfortable targeting the seam. Another question here from Lindorf. Are we giving up on Lenny being a thing?
We should have given up a while ago.
Because I feel like, he really hoping he would have been elevated by now, Kyle. I am keeping him around in a few 14-team leagues. I wish I were kidding.
They're playing Ty Johnson over him. It's over.
Okay, Jackson is wondering next week, Achane, Achan, or Javante. Then
we answered the McBride.
Yeah, we didn't answer that one. Achane or Javante. Are you worried? I'm going to ask you about this in the podcast tomorrow, but is Javante not an every down back anymore again? What's going on?
No, I said last week it wasn't every down back. He doesn't play on third downs. They just targeted him on early downs, and they played a ton of like hurry up 2-minute drill stuff this past game. He doesn't play on those situations. He's targeted heavily when he's on the field on early downs, but they didn't really have normal situations a ton last night already? 2 nights ago?
It was last night. It's hard to say, but it was last night. Yeah.
So yeah, he's like a 2.2 down back. He plays all the early downs and is even targeted on those and doesn't really take the field a ton for like 2-minute drill stuff. I just don't think Achan's playing this week. And
I don't either. Why would he play this week? It's a short week. It's a real tough defense, but a tough defense they can beat without him. It stinks that they're in this situation, but I think they're going to be. They did say he wanted to come back in the game or whatever. So maybe he's just literally not hurt. He'll play Friday, but I think if he's hurt at all,
there's a Friday game.
Yeah, it's bad. It's real bad.
We have a Friday game.
Yeah, Zach's covering it, by the way. He's
nice.
He's going to be trying to do injury reports with you while he's doing it, by the way.
What time is the game?
I believe it's at 3 p.m. Eastern. Sorry, folks.
What in the hell is going on?
American commerce, folks. Max Oxford needs to know that he's not being blinded by this trade. 12-team PPR. He's sending Derrick Henry and Amon-Ra St. Brown for Travis Kelce and Joe Mixon. He didn't list his roster, but just not knowing in the next question. But without knowing his roster, what do you say about the trade? Derrick Henry and Amon-Ra for Travis Kelce and Joe Mixon.
I'll probably take the Amon-Ra side, I think.
Amon-Ra is the best player in the deal. I hate to say it, even over Travis Kelce, but I don't know, man. Like, you're getting the best tight end, and Joe Mixon is probably going to I don't know, Jake.
No, dude, that's why I
right.
think you can cross out, like doing like addition, subtraction homework, cross out Joe Mixon and Derrick Henry. They're both like playing a bunch of snaps. Actually, Derrick Henry doesn't even play a bunch of snaps, but they're both getting a bunch of work on teams that are just going to be terrible. So I would straight up view this. Would you rather have Amon-Ra or Kelce? And they weren't that far off when we were drafting them as like, oh, can Amon-Ra take the next step? He has taken the next step. So I'm slightly Amon-Ra here, especially because this is
starting Logan Thomas
tight ends off the wire.
He's starting Logan Thomas as his tight end, though.
I think if you can get Isaiah Likely off of the wire, plus Amon-Ra is better than Kelce and whatever receiver would be.
Yeah, because your receiver core is not that great, to be honest. You'd have you got a really great top two. He could maybe do it. You're not going to blow up your roster if you make this trade. We'll say that. Your roster will still be pretty intact. And if you want the tight end upgrade that desperately, you don't want to grind tight end streamers, it's not a bad trade. So no, you're not getting taken advantage of in the trade, Mac. I will say that to you. But Amon-Ra is the best player in the deal. I think I totally agree with that one. Moondog wants to rank these receivers rest of the season, Kyle. They're fed up with Hollywood Brown, Nico Collins, DeAndre Hopkins. Please rank them for Moondog.
Collins, Hopkins, Brown? Or should I go? I'm Collins for sure at 1. That's my initial thought too, but is he really for sure at 1? Because like Nico Collins has been like the ultimate stop-start player in terms of fantasy momentum this year. We would like to think he's finally on the runway to like every week wide receiver 2 production, but it seems like there's like a new variable for him every single week. Whenever they've had receivers in and out of the lineup, though, it has never affected his playing time. It's always been like Noah Brown strangely played over Tank Dell in this game. Then like Robert Woods came back and then Noah Brown was out of the lineup or whatever. Every time he's been in, his workload has been really strong. And I think the only thing that really, derails his season so far is just the injury. So to me, he's very clearly ahead of these guys. And then do you have a preference on Brown versus Hopkins? I don't have a strong take. I guess maybe go Brown just based on the upside of like what if his offense is good, because there's no what if. I know the Titans aren't good.
Well, it's weird. Brown and Hopkins are like in the same position where like they are the clear alphas on their team. There's one team that's still making it happen reasonably often with their alpha, and that is the Titans with Hopkins. Where like They are working overtime to make it happen, whereas the Cardinals don't seem like they care if Hollywood Brown produces or not, with
Fair,
2 or 3 different quarterbacks now. So I probably still preferred Hopkins over Hollywood. Totally agree with your take, though, that if you just want unknown upside, I would much rather be gambling on Hollywood Brown finally developing a connection with Kyler Murray down the stretch. And there's a chance that we've seen the peak of DeAndre Hopkins with Will Levis. This isn't a question; it's more of a comment. Lombardi Linney is never late. He's always right on time.
Tell that to my best ball teams that have been waiting for him to get elevated. Tell that to them.
We've got just a few minutes left. If you've got some questions, please get them in. Douglas is wondering, would you trade away Kelsey and Charbonnet for Laporta, Olave, and Aaron Jones in a PPR league, Kyle?
No. Mostly because I'm really afraid of what we have with Aaron Jones, or the lack of what we have with him. Like, banged up. Role was questionable early in the year, and then as soon as they give him the good role, gets hurt again. On an offense, it's not very good. So
Laporta, I think even if you X'd out, though, Aaron Jones from that deal, it's still kind of a compelling deal. It's hard to trade Travis Kelce, whose positional value is still just like absolutely through the roof, even though he's kind of slumping heading into the Chiefs bye. Laporta and Olave, I could be talked into that being a better twosome than Kelce and Charbonnet. I will say that. I think I would actually do the trade, just to be honest.
Okay. But you're more confident than I am. I think it's neutral and you think it's a good deal. So on average, we still are do the deal.
I do agree that Aaron Jones, man, is just like, yikes. And there's no way he's playing week 12, even though he avoided major injury. He's not playing Thanksgiving morning. So that is a big problem. Chad is wondering about Ramondre Stevenson in Dynasty. He can still get relatively strong value. It sounds like he's got some offers out there. So would you be looking to sell Ramondre in Dynasty, or hope and pray the Pats manage to fall into the Drake May draft slot, Kyle?
Yeah, I'm probably selling him. Like, any running back with questionable production who's not like a first-year player, I'm totally fine trying to cash my chips out on, because running back is just such a brutal position. Like, if they don't figure it out at quarterback in the coming year, the next time he could play on a good offense, he could be like 27 already.
We were just talking about Sam Laporta. I was just asking, where'd that question go? Oh my God, I accidentally deleted it. Really good. Oh no, here we go. I was asking Denny about this in our podcast today. Any concern with Sam Laporta, whose routes have been down the past few weeks, I believe? Gibbs is getting a lot of targets. Jamison Williams is getting a few more targets. It seems like maybe they're trying to protect Sam Laporta from the rookie wall. Do you think that's happening, Kyle? Or are you concerned with Sam Laporta's 2-game blip the past 2 weeks?
Yeah, I mean, all of his metrics are really strong. Last week, he ran a route in just shy of 90% of the team's dropbacks. Week before that was 76, which is good. It's really not bad. And the week before that was 92, which that's as high as you get. Like, almost no one, not even Travis Kelce, is at 100%. Like, target shares the past 2 weeks are fine. They're more like low-end tight end one numbers. But also, we talked about this on the pod last night, is that I feel like Laporta not being involved for about 3 quarters yesterday's game was more this is why the offense is failing. Like, the reason Laporta hasn't gotten targets is not because they moved away from him. It's emblematic of how bad the offense was. And I don't think I know they won't be that bad. Goff isn't throwing 3 interceptions in 3 quarters ever again. So
you sure about that?
3 quarters is a quick time to throw that many interceptions.
Even for Jared Goff, that is pretty extreme. I'm going to answer this question. Should the trade deadline be different in Dynasty leagues than redraft? I think there should be no trade deadline in Dynasty. And some people hate this because
I'm fine with it. I like it.
Sometimes, at the end of the year, they absolutely hate when their opponent, like in week 16 or 17, makes some huge trade and basically vaults themselves ahead of the person. After, you've spent so much time building up your Dynasty roster, it feels like you get kind of dipsy-do to the playoffs. But there's a real cost to that for the player who is making those late season trades. And it's one of the quickest ways to turn over bad rosters in a Dynasty league and keep parity in a Dynasty league. Because it's frustrating when someone makes one of those trades against you and upgrades their team against you, but there's a real price to be paid for those trades, for like 1 or 2 games. So I actually do not think there should be a trade deadline in Dynasty leagues. The Dynasty league I've been in forever with a lot of Rotoworld guys, we do not have a trade deadline. Every once in a while, someone complains about it, but
I like this. No, I'm 100% on board with this. Like, and it's not like everyone has the potential to trade for those guys, and it's on you to decide, like, do I want to mortgage the future for weeks 16 and 17? And like, or do I want to let my opponent gamble with their future and think, like, I still have a good team. Even if your opponent is going out and picking up studs and studs, you're probably at worst like a 70-30 dog. And when you pull that off, they're like the Brooklyn Nets of whatever.
No, it's
they trade
true.
for Kevin Garnett or something?
The Nets, they traded for Garnett, they traded for Paul Pierce, they traded for James Harden, they traded for Kevin Durant, they've traded for
I think it was the like Garnett Pierce era, if they both played together, that like famously tanked them forever. But also that you're right, they have kind of done that again more recently.
But they did not learn their lesson the first time.
Yeah, you can let your opponent like really gamble with their life and still have a shot at winning. So I think it's a perfectly fine game. I think it makes it more interesting. 2
more questions. One more from Ben. Keaton Mitchell or Jaylen Warren this week? Jaylen Warren got the PPR goodness.
Warren, it's not close.
You really?
Yeah. Didn't Keaton Mitchell touch the ball like 4 times or something again?
Yeah, I don't know why I act like that is not close. We'll give Moondog the final word. What is your take on Justin Jefferson? They've really slow played his return, but they lost to the Broncos. They really, really need this game this week. It is the final week of his window. They could activate him and then still not play him. Do you think we are getting Justin Jefferson in week 12?
No. They still are talking about, we're going to be cautious with him. And you said they get the bye week, right? Coming up. They get the final, I think they get the final bye week, so they can rest him.
Do they really? That's bad.
I'll look it up, but I'm fairly confident.
I'm looking it up right now.
Yeah. Go for it. But yeah, they were still talking
they have
a
week 13 bye for the Vikings.
They are talking about what's going on. They are talking about they're talking about slow playing him. They still need to be smart with him on the precipice of their bye week so they can get the extra like 2 weeks from now till then. I don't think he plays.
Yeah, shoot. That I don't know. They are so desperate. They need this win real bad. They need every game real bad from here on out. It's another thing. I understand being cautious of the player, but like if the dude is just like fully not hurt anymore, he's probably gonna play him. He seems like he's verging towards just not hurt anymore. He's been practicing for 2 weeks. Like, how injured could he really be? I would say there's a 47% chance he comes back this week. I do share your pessimism.
I'd put it like 25. I don't think he's playing.
I agree with you that he's on the wrong side of questionable. And I agree with me that the chat is unfortunately over. We had a lot of really good questions tonight. Hope everyone has a really good holiday week. Hope everyone keeps it locked to Rotoworld.com. We're releasing a lot of stuff early this week that includes our Week 12 preview show. Kyle, Denny, and I are recording Tuesday afternoon. Regression files will be out. The waiver wire is already out. Stardom Cinema probably still out on Thursday, correct, Kyle?
Yeah, Friday. Yeah.
Friday. Okay, sorry. Yeah, I knew that. Rankings are actually coming out Wednesday night this week. So thank you so much for joining us. Thank you so much for keeping the chat lively. For Kyle Dvorchak, I'm Patrick Daugherty. Thank you, and we'll be back next Monday at 6 p.m. Eastern.